The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Welcome to the program, and we have some breaking news, which is why we ask you to be sure and subscribe and turn your notifications on, whether or not you're on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. You want to be sure and get the latest as we broadcast live at 10 a.m. each and every weekday, but you can catch it whenever is convenient for you. But I encourage you to be a part of the program at 10 a.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday. So coming up, we'll discuss the Austin Peay game. Of course, we'll name our torchbearers, give a report card of the game, which obviously was lackluster to say the least. Spencer Riley, Tennessee former offensive lineman, will join us. We look forward to that each and every Monday. We'll discuss, was it drop passes or bad passes? And how good are the Vols up front on both sides of the ball? Because the passing game was an issue in the first half especially. But otherwise, if you break it down piece by piece, Tennessee played pretty well. We'll have SEC power rankings, also college football week 2 takeaways. Yes, we will discuss Alabama. Before we get to the breaking news, Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Happy Monday. Just want to take a second to commemorate all the lives lost on September 11th, 22 years ago. I was a big deal when I was 13 living in Memphis, but living in the DC area for a while, I didn't realize how big of a deal it was up here for a long time.
Amen. That is very well said. And certainly one of those days that I'll never forget. And God bless those that are still dealing with the absence of their loved ones because of those heinous acts. So that's very well said, Caleb. I do appreciate that. Been a busy morning, and quite frankly, I meant to mention that earlier. But let's go ahead and get to some football. As again, they are all in my thoughts and prayers. When we talk about football, let's start with today's tough question. But first, let me set it up a little bit. So I was told this morning by a source very close to the program that Tennessee held a players-only meeting on Sunday that was organized by the leaders of Tennessee's football team. And we're going to discuss whether or not they were drop passes by Tennessee's intended receivers or bad throws. I've talked to former players, and I've gotten both sides of that. So we'll discuss that. But the tenor of the meeting was this, in which Joe Milton, regardless of whose fault it actually was, took complete blame and said it's on me in a very positive leadership role. And Tennessee's players all agreed amongst themselves that they needed to amp it up starting today. That the practices last week weren't bad. I don't want to imply that by the tenor of the meeting. However, they weren't quite as intense as they should have been. Perhaps that was an opponent. Perhaps it was just a bad week. I don't know. But I think what I come away with most of all, Caleb, is that Tyler Bray, and we could, Tyler Bray, that Joe Milton, Tyler Bray popped up on my timeline, that Joe Milton took the blame for all of this, which I think is, whether or not it's his fault or drop passes, I believe that was the right thing to do as a leader. And we'll see if Tennessee comes away from this players-only meeting as a positive or not. So what are your early thoughts, as this is news just breaking on offthehooksports.com literally minutes ago? What are your initial thoughts on the players-only meeting held by Tennessee's leaders, and Joe Milton taking the blame for going 1 of 8 in particular. He ended up with a pretty good stat line, but 1 of 8 in early in the game.
I think it's actually a good sign. Now, players only meetings are not always a good sign. You know, if you're on a 3-game losing streak and your coach is on the hot seat and you call a players only meeting, you can rest assured that coach will be fired at the end of the year almost every single time. But I do think this one, it's a players only meeting to, hey, let's make sure a slide doesn't begin and a snowball doesn't start. I'll tell you one time a players only meeting worked out, and I know this happened, was after Tennessee lost a 5th straight game to Florida in 1997. And I wish we can maybe ask Spencer Riley about this, but I believe Peyton Manning called a players only meeting after that Florida loss. And at the very least, I know gave a speech before the Ole Miss game the next week and said, you know, hey guys, yeah, we lost again, but cherish every chance you get to play college football. The NFL's there, but you know, you only get to do this once every 4 years or for 4 years. And the way he took leadership after that loss to Florida, I think kept the team focused, because they easily could have laid it down and said, oh my gosh, here we go again. We're not going to win the East. We just lost to Florida. And they didn't. And, you know, they played their butts off at Ole Miss, Georgia, Alabama. Jamal Lewis emerged. We know what happened in 97. So I think I think a players only meeting can be done right. I do think this is a good sign that they did hold the players only meeting, because again, it's not like they're 0-2 or 1-1 or 4-5 or 3-6. They're 2-0. They just had a really, really, really hideous win. And they need to maybe refocus their confidence a little bit.
Nope. I think it all depends on leadership. I think that this team's leadership is going to be tested. Every team's leadership is going to be tested at some point during the season. I'm going to give you an example of a bad players-only meeting, and it seemed like Tennessee's basketball team under Jerry Green had a players-only meeting about every other week, and it never got anywhere. But I would say that the leadership for this particular team is still in question. Last year it was really, really good. Do I think that it's going to be good? Yes, I do think that it's going to be good this year, and this will be a positive thing if you ask me that question. So I believe that this will be a positive for Tennessee. I think it is natural for I'm going to sound like an excuse maker for Tennessee. I'm going to tell you right now that I think the weather delay hurt Tennessee. I'm going to tell you that I think maybe they overlooked Austin Peay a little bit. And I think you've got Florida coming up. And I think this team at the end of the day knew that they could absolutely beat Austin Peay with a D effort, which is about what they got. So I thought across the board, if you really look at it outside of those dropped or inaccurate passes, whatever you want to call them, that Tennessee played really well defensively. Tennessee ran the ball well. So it was an ugly win, but at the end of the day, it was a win. Absolutely. And Tennessee showed once again that they can survive a cold streak. They did that for a second against Virginia when I thought Joe Milton went a little awry. But no matter what you believe, and we'll get into whether or not they're drop passes or inaccurate passes, I do believe that this will end up being a good thing for the Vols. And I think it's good that you go ahead and nip it in the bud right now, not to steal my own lead from offthehooksports.com.
Yeah, I agree. I actually, looking back on it, let's break down everything that happened. There was the weather delay. Yes, outside of the miscues in the game, which were inexcusable, but there was the weather delay. There was the fact that Scotty Walden at Austin Peay, as I mentioned on Saturday, literally threw the kitchen sink at Tennessee. I mean, the guy burned all 3 of his timeouts in the third quarter just to make sure Tennessee couldn't get their tempo to go. I mean, he was committed to throwing Tennessee off its game, and kudos to him. It worked. But you're not going to see Florida burn all 3 timeouts in the third quarter, because they might think they're still in the game and they're going to want those timeouts in the fourth quarter. And so that was a big deal. Also, look, we have to talk about officiating a little bit, because I thought there were a lot of bad calls that went against Tennessee and a lot of missed calls, particularly the holding penalties on the screens. Those weren't missed calls. Those were actually good calls. But there was a blatant pass interference on Jabari Small that should have been called that stalled one drive. I mean, clear as day in the end zone. There was that really dirty, unsportsmanlike play against Warren Burrell on the punt return. And there were there were at least 2 ticky-tack PI calls on Kamal Hadden in the game. That one, I think he was at fault. He didn't turn his head, but 2 others he did turn around and they still called the PI. And so I just got to be honest. There was questionable officiating that worked much more against Tennessee than Austin Peay in the game. Now, again, Tennessee should have, in spite of all of that, won the game 62-0. But if I mention those things, I mean, we're talking instead of 30-13, it's probably what 51-6, and we're thinking about this game a little bit differently.
True. Today's tough question brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. We're going to address this players only meeting right now, and AndyMasonRealEstate.com needs to be your home for real estate needs in Knoxville. Over 40 years of experience in his office. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. He's my realtor. He should be yours.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
I'm not even going to give you an option of maybe, Caleb. I'm going to say very good or very bad that Tennessee had a players-only meeting. No middle ground here.
Very good. They're not pretending to be satisfied with what happened on Saturday. How often do you hear coaches or players say, a win is a win, and it's college football, and any team can beat anybody? And I think by calling the players-only meeting, Tennessee's like, no, that's not it. This was unacceptable, and there's no way you should be happy about this.
No, I agree. I think it's a good thing. And listen, I'm the guy who rolled my eyes on those Jerry Green teams that had players-only meetings. Well, they always had players-only meetings after losses. So to say that 30-13, which still is a significant margin of victory, is not good enough, I think is a positive sign. Now, if we're talking about another players-only meeting here in 3 weeks, Caleb, there's a problem. But I don't foresee that being the case as I try to forecast forward.
Yeah, I don't think so either. This isn't like, and player and everybody on the message board will love this reference, but remember 2016 Tennessee that started the year in the top 10, and they kept playing with fire and winning ugly against the worst teams. They needed overtime to beat Appalachian State. They looked bad against Ohio. That battle at Bristol game against Virginia Tech, they fell behind 14-0. And it did come back to finally bite them when they had a 3-game losing streak in the middle of the season. And then that's when Butch Jones's whole tenure unraveled. It doesn't feel like that with this one. It feels like it was one bad outing. They still won 30-13, and they're not happy with it. And I think not being happy with it is something you should be happy about if you're following Tennessee.
Yeah, I think the team meeting, had this been a Butch Jones coach team, would be, hey, good job, guys. Overcame some really bad coaching against Austin Peay. How about that? Let's go ahead and get to the report card and our torchbearers of the week, as that is online right now, and you can check it out on offthehooksports.com if you would like to read that. So let's start with the quarterback, who you have at a D-. I thought Joe Milton was inaccurate and is 1 of 8. However, I spoke to Spencer Riley and Fred White over the weekend. That Sunday show with Fred, brought to you by our friends at Herald Group Security Solutions. And he thought they were drop passes. So I think you and I thought they were more on the quarterback because he throws hard, and they weren't perfect passes. We would all agree with that. But he put it, Fred and Spencer said they saw a lot of drop passes. And Fred in particular said that if it hits your hands, you got to make the play. That is the old saying, and I get that, which probably brought me a little bit closer to center. But if I ask you, is it 80% the receiver's fault or 80% Joe Milton's fault on the 1 for 8? What would you say?
I'll go more the receiver. If I have to do 80 or 80, it's 80% the receivers. And the reason I go more receivers is I don't think Joe Milton, we all know what he can't do, and accuracy is just not his strong suit. The way you overcome that is you have these 5-star receivers all over the field that are supposed to be elite that can catch the ball as long as it's within their vicinity. But they didn't do that on Saturday. I mean, none of the passes were exactly on target, but again, unless you're having Peyton Manning throw you the ball or an NFL quarterback, which between me and you, I don't think Joe Milton is an NFL quarterback. if you're a 5-star receiver, if you're an NFL receiver, you got to make those catches.
I'm going to come back to the middle. I thought that the passes were off, but listen, I know that Fred White's played a lot more football than I have, which is not saying a lot, but I'm going to go with his call on that Sunday show with Fred. I think that Joe Milton has to take a little heat off of it and throw the ball with his fingers. I think that's troubling. We talked to David Cutcliffe about that at SEC Media Days, and he has to put a little bit more touch, even on the balls that he likes to heat in there, because that's to me, they were tough catches that they were dropped. You had the running backs at a C+, that's a little harsh, and you had the wide receivers at an F. I can't argue with that. Tight end was
the reason I had running backs at C+ guys is they should have run for what they ran for, and Jabari Small did drop an easy screen pass that would have been a 60-yard touchdown.
That's fair. No, he did. And that would have been a really nice call. Or was a really nice call. Tight end gets a C. Offensive line gets a C-. You had the defensive line at a D+, and the linebackers at a B+. I thought as a whole, the front seven played good. So I would say you're a little harsh on those guys, in my opinion. Can you talk about the grades?
Well, so the defensive line, again, that's one of those where they should have gotten the advantage. They were playing Austin Peay. I mean, whenever a game like this happens, the biggest advantage is in the trenches. And
let me clarify one thing. So all of yours are graded somewhat on a curve because it's Austin Peay. In other words, if this is Alabama and the same thing happens, the grades are different.
Right. Exactly.
By the way, we'll talk about Alabama. Go ahead.
Austin Peay controlled the clock in the fourth quarter. There's no way the defensive line should have let that happen. And honestly, in many ways, they started it. It happened from the start. I mean, don't forget that fourth down play on the first drive. The defensive line let Mike DeLeolo run for almost a touchdown because he got through the hole. I mean, that shouldn't happen in a game like this. So there were too many times they let Austin Peay stay on the field. I know that, look, if for everybody who covers Tennessee, we know time of possession. Josh Heupel cares nothing for time of possession. But the defense does need to get off the field, though. And they didn't do that much against Austin Peay in this game.
So you had the secondary to C-, kicking game A-, return game on a C-. Let's look at the torchbearers for the Vols. We give out awards for those that played at their absolute best against Austin Peay. And yes, there were some. Caleb's going to have to eat some crow at number 1. But let's start with Jackson Ross at number 5. You had him as a torchbearer. Tennessee's punter pinned 2 punts inside the 20-yard line that went over 45 yards. One was fumbled. That was big. Jalen Wright, you mentioned as a torchbearer. I really just love the way he runs. I think he wears on you, and I think he is also scary enough with the way he can bounce things. Wesley Walker made a couple of plays as well. And a guy that you've been critical of, and I have too, Kamal Hadden. What did you think of Kamal Hadden's play on Saturday against Austin Peay?
So I went back and watched some of the highlights yesterday and some of the key moments of the game. And there were a couple of penalties that I blamed Kamal Hadden for, but I went back and looked and he shouldn't have been called for those. There was only one pass interference that he should have been called for. And for some reason, when we talked on Saturday, I thought he was the one who had the busted coverage on the touchdown pass, and that turned out to be Danico Slaughter who had that busted coverage. So after that, when you factor in the interception and the 3 pass breakups, I don't know if Kamal Hadden can do this against the number 1 receivers in the SEC. I still really question him against elite SEC receivers, but he did his job on Saturday against Austin Peay's receivers.
And then number 1, Aaron Beasley, who's playing without the guy who was supposed to be his linebacker mate all season. That's Keenan Pili, who's going to be out for an extended period of time. Beasley certainly showed up. A historic performance. Man, he played really well. 5 tackles for a loss, 2 sacks, 9 tackles. There was 1 tackle for a loss in which he broke up a screen that I thought could have popped. And it looks like he and Elijah Herring will be the starters going forward. Beasley suddenly looks like a star. That's Caleb writing that. That's not me. And Caleb, I take it you're a little surprised by Beasley and his play, given that you've been critical of him until now.
You guys have got me
too. I mean, I'm not throwing you under the bus. You know that, right?
Yes, I know, but I'm so owned right now, guys. I mean, Aaron Beasley has proven me wrong because of what he did in a meaningless bowl game and against Austin Peay. Man, I just, you know what? Let's just throw the flowers out now. All American, guys. All American. Yes, he had a historic performance.
You're so gracious. You're so gracious. That is just incredible that you're willing to take that stance. I thought he played really well. And we have Jimmy Himes on each and every Wednesday, and Jimmy said that he thought that Beasley would have a career year, a breakout year this upcoming season because he was allowed to play more weak side linebacker. Well, we wondered when Peely got hurt if that would still be the case, but it is still the case, at least as far as the Austin Peay game goes. We'll see when Tennessee plays Florida on Saturday. And hey, listen, one thing you got to like about Beasley is he just seems much more active than he has in the past. I don't know if that's further understanding the system or what all that is, but he just seems to be playing free. If you watch him like 3 or 4 plays in a row, and I did so on Saturday and then rewatch the game, he just seems more intent on the direction that he's going, and there's no second guessing whatsoever. And I was really impressed by that, whether he's playing Mike or weak or whatever position he's playing. So yeah, I think Tennessee, obviously without Peely, they played really well at the linebacker position, and for the most part, the front seven, although you didn't like the defensive line considering the context, which I understand.
And let's be fair, let's not underrate this part, which is we thought they were going to move Beasley over to middle linebacker and start Arian Carter. They kept Beasley at weak side and put in Elijah Herring at middle linebacker, who has more of the body. What that tells me is something you've talked about with the Hypo program, Dave, which is player development. Herring's been in the system for a year, and he, again, it was Austin Peay, but he looked more than able to step into that middle linebacker role and play his job pretty well.
And I would have bet you money that wasn't the case a year from now. To speak to the player development aspect of it. Yeah, I don't think that Herring would have been able to take over at middle linebacker in the middle of a season and be as effective as he was. And I think that they would have had to shift stuff around. And I will credit Tennessee's coaching staff for not panicking and shifting Beasley back to the middle. We thought it would be Arian Carter at outside, and that's what they would do, but they didn't. They kind of stuck to their guns and made sure that Beasley was a playmaker on the weak side. So kudos to them. Hit the like and subscribe button. Turn your notifications on if you haven't to this point. In 2 minutes, we will visit with Spencer Riley and get his thoughts on Tennessee's defensive and offensive front, as well as were those drop passes or bad passes. 2 minutes.
Our family has been creating one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry in West Knoxville since 1986. Each piece is a combination of unique processes that bring your idea to life. Every day in our shop, a truly special item with a story all its own is being manufactured in our facility, bringing the history and family sentiment into a whole new generation of life. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler, a title that we value and respect. Because to me, being a jeweler and owning a jewelry store are not the same thing. I'm Rick Terry. I'm a jeweler, and we want to be your jeweler. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
These mountains hold and defend a spirit far better than moonshine. A drink that holds flavor that becomes necessity. A hard cider made and relished by folk who are as hearty as they are legend. A refreshment that can only be found in one place. With a taste that makes you say, give me 3 bottles of the good stuff. Tennessee Cider Company, where necessity can be found.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show.
Who?
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, here we go. Tennessee does beat Austin Peay, but it was not gorgeous. But the Vols get the win. It is Florida week, so that's pretty awesome. And it's Monday, which means we get to visit with Spencer Riley, VFL Center, joins us now. And Spencer, how are you, sir? First, congrats on the big win. I see the shirt. Can I get a shirt like that?
Oh, man, you know what, man? Maybe we can find you something to wear.
Congrats on the big win on Friday. Talk about your program, Jeff County, and what they were able to do before we break down the Vols a little bit.
Sure, man. We didn't get kicked off till 9:40 on Friday night because of lightning delay and stuff like that. So we played Kingsport Dobbins Bennett here at home and got a big region win Friday night. Played Science Hill the week before, played DB this week, so this last week. And first time in school history we beat them in the same year, much less back-to-back. So great for our kids. Our kids have done a great job, and it's been a fun last 2 weeks football game wise, especially when you're used to playing in those high intensity, high meaning football games early in the year, and they're just exciting to be a part of.
Good for you, man. I'm happy for you. Rooting from you from afar, and I want a shirt for sure. So
we'll take care of that, my man.
All right, Spencer. I'll trade you one. Spencer,
That works.
Let me ask you this. So I'm texting you over the weekend and about coming on, and you had said that you noticed a lot of drop passes, and just in that text, I took a lot from that because I talked to Fred White on that Sunday show with Fred, and Fred said they were drop passes. I thought they were inaccurate passes, but you guys have played way more football than me. Why did you guys both choose drop passes as opposed to maybe a little bit of both?
Well, I'll say this. When the ball touches a wide receiver's hand, that's what you get paid to do as a wide receiver, catch the football. So, not every ball is going to be perfect, right? Peyton Manning threw the worst deep ball in college football history, but he's one of the best football players to ever play. Let's just call it how it is. His ball was never a spiral. It was just a kind of a wobbly ball every once in a while. You go back and look at it, and you'll see as a college football player, he didn't throw a very good deep ball. I think Mr. Milton, shoot, buddy, he's a freaking player. He's a gunslinger. He can freaking sling it. And it sounds different when it leaves his hands, right? And it does take some receivers some time to get used to that. But at the end of the day, your job is to catch the football. And if it touches your hands, it should be called. Where I was standing in the first quarter, there was about 3 drop balls right in front of me from the field. Hit them dead square in the hands, about chest height, the ball right in their face. You know what I mean? That's just not acceptable for wide receiver play. And I'm sure the wide receivers coach is letting them know about that. And, you know what I mean? And rightfully so. But I will say this, you're going to hear me say, hey, I believe there are drops, but I will tell you this. I believe they blocked the piss out of freaking the DBs for Austin Peay. They do a great job blocking, hands down. People going to complain about the holding calls. Well, when you're blocking people for 10 yards down the field and they're getting just freaking abused by wide receivers, come on now. At some point in time, they're going to be complaining about them being held. And some officials will take that. I kind of was watching some interviews, and Coach Heupel said he didn't. Somebody asked that question about the holding calls, and he didn't reply. He didn't answer because he didn't want to. He didn't, at the end of the day, he replies about officials, he's going to get fined. Well, I'll just sit here and tell you, they weren't very good. Don't call holding right there because, hey, you can call holding on any play. We teach holding as offensive line coaches. If you're not holding, you're not doing your job. And that's when you block, and that's what every position is taught.
Yeah, good stuff. Now, we broke this morning on offthehooksports.com. There was a players-only meeting. Let me give you a thumbnail of that. And that basically Joe Milton said, I'll take all the blame. And last week at practice perhaps wasn't as intense as it needed to be. Just what is your take on a players only meeting and kind of what I just shared with you?
I mean, I think Joe Milton's a great leader, but I think more importantly, he's a great teammate. You know what I mean? That's why he's going to be successful. I mean, come on, guys. In 1998, we weren't very good in the first 3 football games. We won close football games. We didn't, and we didn't beat opponents like we should have beat them. But I'll tell you one thing that this team and we did in 98, they got great defense. Let's just be honest with you. Defense will take you a long ways. And I sit here to tell you from experience right now with our football club, we're not great on offense. We run the football really well. We don't throw it necessarily as great as I want to. We have drops, but the one thing is defense will keep you in the football game, and you end up winning the ball game comfortably, right? You didn't win it the way you're supposed to, but you won it comfortably. And you would like to get some more kids in playing in ball games like that and get some more game experience and stuff like that. I understand that 100%, but at the end of the day, it's a win. Ugly, pretty, 101, 100 to 1, it don't matter. It's a win. And, Tennessee fans, let's just call it how it is. I've been a part of this, and I think we have the greatest fan base in the world, but sometimes I think we have some unrealistic expectations of what we expect out of 18 to 22-year-old kids. Let's just call it how it is. And this is coming from a former player and a football coach, dealing with it on a daily basis, what the expectations are for college athletes and high school athletes.
Spencer, talking about whether or not, the whole whether it's a quarterback or receivers, you mentioned the 98 team, and you guys, you're right. I remember when y'all really turned it on. It seemed like the second half of the Georgia game was when you guys really found your rhythm and just never looked back after that. Leading up to that, I remember T. Martin struggling a lot, but was that more a T. Martin thing, or were we missing, he and receivers just weren't on the same page and there were just some things that we didn't really catch that we as viewers?
Well, I mean, I'll just say, tell you, he never started a football game or played much in any football game until 1998. You know what I mean? It's called experience. At the end of the day, experience is the best thing for success. Is when you have experience of seeing those live bullets a day in and day out on the field in front of 102,000 people. I mean, guys, it was a great atmosphere on Saturday, and it was loud. But come on now, the experience of Joe Milton is the more he plays, the better he's going to get. You know what I mean? And I believe that. I'm a fan. He's not done anything to tell me he's not the guy.
Yep. And Fred pointed out in that Sunday show with Fred, 0 turnovers in 2 games. So while you may have an inaccurate pass, and we could debate that, as long as you're not turning the ball over, you're not putting your team in a tough predicament.
No, I know that. I know we had 1 turnover as a fumble by a wide receiver, I do believe, trying to gain extra yards. Right. Hey, I don't fault trying to get extra yards. You know what I mean? But you preach ball security. And they're doing a good job with that, man. Joe Milton's not turned the football over. And that's all you can ask for out of your quarterback position. Is don't turn it over. Don't put the ball in harm's way. It's us or nobody. And that's the way we look at it as coaches. You know what I mean? And, I have a hard time blaming Joe Milton for some of those balls that are not called, for sure.
Very fair. And I was talking about Milton hadn't had a turnover to this point, which I think is pretty darn impressive, kind of carrying the tradition that Hendon Hooker did last year, which is phenomenal, the amount of touchdown passes this offense can produce without interceptions. Let's switch to the trenches, which you know well. Tennessee played its second game without Cooper Mays. They're hoping that he can make it back for the Florida game. I've been told that's very questionable. But if they have to go without Coop, what do you think of Ollie Lane to this point?
I think he's been solid. Yeah, I know he gave up a sack Saturday, but hey, man, you play enough snaps in the SEC, you're gonna give up a sack, right? Play enough football, you're gonna give up a sack. It's just gonna happen. You know what I mean? Because you're on an island. Sometimes you're gonna be on an island, and you like to win every one of those, and that's your goal, and that's our goal as offensive linemen is to win all the one-on-ones. But at times, that just doesn't happen. He's played. I don't know how many snaps he's truly played at Tennessee. You know what I mean? But I know I think I don't know how many starts he's had either, but he's played enough to know. But I think it's his first time really playing center, I do believe, Dave. And so, I mean, hey, you're fighting a 300-pound man with one hand between your leg. You know what I mean? Before you get the snap off, and you get your other hand on him, you're playing. You're not in a very good position at that point in time. So you're trying to battle to get back in that great position that you can be in to start the street fight.
Spencer, who else and it's, you take Austin Peay with a grain of salt, but and we've talked a lot at length about Ollie Lane's play. Was there anybody else that kind of shockingly stood out to you on Saturday on the line in the trenches?
Man, and I say this all the time with my guys. I say, if you go unseen and unheard, you've probably played a pretty good football game. You know what I mean? And the offensive line play, the only time you get your name calls when you get a holding call. You give up a sack. Let's call it how it is. If you don't hear their name, they've played pretty good. You know what I mean? I thought we ran the football really well as a group, you know what I mean, as an offense Saturday. You know what I mean? I don't know what Austin Peay was thinking when they're playing. They play 4 guys in a box versus a six-man box we had. And we just decided we're going to run the football at them. And, you know what I mean? And they just couldn't stop it at times. You know what I mean? At one point, I think we had 17 rushes for 130-plus yards, I think, something like that. Sometime right about the fourth quarter, right in the middle of the third quarter. You know what I mean? So I think we try to do some things in this ball game to get us prepared for down the road. I think we threw the ball a little bit more, maybe not. It just seemed like that a little bit. Because when Tennessee's at their best, when this football team is at their best, they are running the football well. And then the passing game just happens to come about, right? And I still don't know if we truly took a shot down the field throughout the ball game, a truly deep ball shot. I know we threw a bunch of receiver hit screens and stuff like that, and we got called for some holdings and some PIs on that, which I take with a grain of salt. Go play the next play, go get it back. You know what I mean? It is what it is. That's an effort play to me. You know what I mean? Holding, you're busting your butt and you get called for holding. It is what it is. You can't have the stupid penalties, the unnecessary penalties, the personal fouls, things of that nature, which we are not having at this point in time in the year. You know what I mean? Late hits, things of that nature to keep you on the field as a defense or back you up as an offense there. But in the trenches, I think we're just a solid group. They work hard. I don't see any big superstars at this particular time. Now, look, man, I don't pay attention to draft stock. I don't pay attention to all that stuff. I don't care who the 5-star guy is. As a group, as 5 guys playing as one, I think they're doing a really good job at this point in time in the year.
Wow, Spencer, bringing knowledge. Spencer Riley, former Tennessee center, his brought to you in part by our friends at Apex Apparel Group. Design, brand, market your way. Unique products to promote your business with unparalleled customer service. Go to apexapparelgroup.com, apexapparelgroup.com. You'll be glad that you did. And Spencer, I'm curious what you think of this defensive front, because last year I thought they manufactured pressure with a lot of twists and stunts and blitzes, and they're still doing that. But through player development and some astute recruiting, they're better now, which is
pretty talented.
Yeah, pretty talented.
Pretty talented. Sometimes it comes down to Jimmy's and Joe's guys. You know what I mean? We got some pretty good Jimmys right now. You know what I mean? That are pretty talented, pretty athletic. You know what I mean? I think I seen a stat that we had 12 tackles for loss Saturday at one point in time during the ball game. Come on now. When you're front seven, that's pretty talented. You know what I mean? Anytime you get somebody behind the sticks, you know what I mean, and do those and make them be behind the chains and make them trying to press a little bit more than what they want. And, our defensive line, they're just pretty talented, man. I mean, I watched one of them play the defensive end Pierce. I think it's a Pierce, or I think it's his name, the 27. He freaking takes the left tackle and he dumps him right in the quarterback's lap for a sack. The offensive tackle, left tackle, is the one who gets credit for the sack because he's in his legs. I thought that was one of the most impressive things I've seen in a long time from a defensive lineman at Tennessee. Man, they're just playing hard and playing fast, and they show up in a bad mood when they get there.
I want to jump in here real quick because Caleb, I know you're about to ask something, but you mentioned Pierce. Fred White, doesn't speak in hyperbole, and he said that his ceiling is Leonard Little.
100%.
Wow.
I would agree with that statement.
Wow.
He's a thin, long, athletic kid. That's who he reminds me of.
Wow. That's so strong that both of you guys didn't even hesitate. Sorry, Caleb. Go ahead. I just had to get that in there. Wow.
Oh, that's fine. It's if two people say that played with Leonard Little, that's pretty impressive. Spencer, what do you think of? Do you think sometimes there's an issue with this team? And I want to give Heupel credit because he stays very patient. He'll sit, if they're going to sell out to get rid of those deep balls, and he'll do this bubble screens and run the ball the whole game if he has to. And do you think the players sometimes do you see them get a little bit too antsy though, where they're trying to maybe, I don't know, when things spiraled just a little bit against Austin Peay, they didn't keep their composure a little bit?
I mean, when you're going so fast, I mean, you think the first 3 and out probably took 20 seconds of game time.
That's true.
You know what I mean? I mean, come on now. You're like, we went on the field 20 seconds. We're already on the sideline. Come on now, guys. We got to be better than that. And I can see how that gets frustrating, as an offense, especially with the big guys. You know what I mean? I can see that, especially when you had so many drops there. I mean, you had a drop on the first drive, probably to extend the drive. But, I'm like, and I can understand what you're asking and all that good stuff. I apologize. I'm sitting here in the office and the automatic lights just went out.
It's all right.
So I get up and move and I have to get up and move around here. So, but, I get it. And I get what your question was there, Caleb. I mean, it's at the end of the day, you got to just play, and the game will eventually come to you because your defense is keeping you in the ball game. Let's just be honest. Our defense is going to keep us in the ball game through the whole year. And I'm just telling you that right now. Great group of guys.
I think you're right. And it's interesting to watch this team evolve from last year. That was, again, they ran the football just like you said. And it's a misnomer to say that's just a throwing football team. But it even feels like more of a running football team this year, and a team that has a very vertical defense. So, I mean, this is a different team last year. And people need to understand that, right, Spencer? Because they think that it's just 1 year to 1 year is the same group, and it's not.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, this group have spent some time around the offensive staff and been around Coach Gardner long enough and just watch them practice. I mean, they're very aggressive on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, when your corner is blowing up the screen before he's almost picked off the wide receiver screen before it's even there. I mean, come on now. At some point in time, we're going to get beat on the hitching out. Okay, but we're playing aggressive. It is what it is, right? We're going to take our chances, and we're going to play behind the stick. Number 5, the corner, he gets the PI call, right off the bat in the ball game in the first quarter. He comes back and makes 3 negative yard tackles on a screen play and then breaks up a deep ball. Come on, man. That's what he gets paid to do. I mean, that's what they do at corners. You're out there on an island. You're going to get exposed sometimes, and sometimes you're going to make some plays. I think he's a pretty good player, man. Just watching, I think our secondary is so much more improved athletically than we have been in years past. And but again, defensive line is where you create your pressure and makes a great pass rush is a great coverage guy. Helps out your coverage for sure.
Great stuff. Spencer, you are the man. You've got the Hamlin tour the next couple of weeks. Morristown, Hamlin, East and West. We're rooting for you, my man. And I can't tell you how much this means for you to join us on Mondays. Thank you.
Man, no problem. I enjoy it. I appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
I just learned so much from Spencer. Thank you, Spencer.
You're welcome, man. You may not like what I got to say sometimes, but I'll tell you the truth.
I know. I that was great stuff. Thank you, man. Have a great day.
Hey, man, y'all have a great day. Talk to you later. Go Vols.
So that's 2 people that were on the 1998 championship team that say they were dropped. So for me to sit here and say they were inaccurate passes, and I know Travis is thinking, yeah, that's right, Dave. I mean, it's fair for me to rethink that. So I think the ball is coming in hard. I think it's tough to catch when it's not on target, but I'll alter my thinking. I can be adjustable when 2 guys that know more about football than I do both agree that it was more about drops than it was inaccurate passes.
Yeah, that I mean, I'm one of those, and I think Dave, you and I are both similar in this. We have our takes and we stand strong on our takes and our picks and things like that. But in terms of the actual subtle nuances in the game, we'll defer to football players in that moment. Like, I'll defer. I think we both know when to defer to former players and when not to. And
yes,
yeah,
absolutely. So yeah, there's not going to be a lot of deferring to Arian Foster. In other words, I think is what you're saying.
Yes, and then and then there's also
odd takes.
He does. But then there's also moments where, like, I'm not going to defer to any player when I make a prediction. Like, I'm sorry if I see Alabama or anybody play a certain way, I'm not going to defer to former players on why I think this is going to happen. I might defer to you to get information on why did this happen or this happen, but I'm not going to defer to them on who I'm picking.
I thought that was absolutely great stuff. And man, Spencer will join us each and every Monday. On Tuesday, it'll be John Adams. Wednesday, it'll be Jimmy Himes. Thursday, Josh Ward. And of course, Friday, it's a football Friday with Fred. And you guys like Fred. Man, ton of views for him. Spencer's appearance brought to you in part by our friends at Zen Sports. Zen Sports is the new sports book in Tennessee, revolutionizing the way you earn sports betting rewards. That means no more deposit bonuses that turn into deposit nightmares. On Zen Sports, what you see is what you get. And with their cash rewards program, you get a lot of cash. For a welcome bonus, earn an unlimited 5% cash back on your betting volume for your first 15 days when you sign up with the promo code HOOKED. I'm encouraging you to please go to the site, sign up with the promo code HOOKED. If you are using another app, don't use this one. Use the promo code HOOKED because you can earn off of your betting with up to 3% cash back on your betting volume every month after that, and refer friends to earn a percentage of their betting volume as cash rewards too. Zen Sports bringing the cash back to Tennessee. So if you bet big on sports, you want to be betting on Zen Sports. Zen Sports betting just got better. And by the way, gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Must be 21 and over and in Tennessee to bet. So coming up, we're going to have SEC power rankings, talk some Crimson Tide. And before we do that, though, Tennessee opens as a touchdown plus favorite against Florida, we're just hearing. So what do you make of that number early?
I was shocked. It's 8.5 points. I thought that seems like the line that it would have been before last week. Vegas didn't really react at all to what happened with Tennessee and Austin Peay on Saturday, which I think should be somewhat encouraging for Tennessee fans. Look, guys, these sports books, they have details that we can't even imagine. I mean, they do legwork that is insane. And so for them to set that 8.5 point line, I got to say that should encourage Tennessee fans. I think we also forgot, Florida didn't look, yes, they played McNeese State. They looked better against their FCS foe than Tennessee did against theirs, but they didn't look that great. They're still the Utah game. And then you talk matchups, Dave. We'll talk about this as the week goes on, but Florida's got a statue at quarterback. And if there's one thing Tennessee's got, it's a pass rush. And so.
Okay, so here's the other thing to remember this. Of those 7 incomplete passes, the 1 of 8, if 3 are caught, be it bad throw, drop, whatever, and I'm leaning towards drop at this point, Caleb. I'm standing corrected. I'm correcting myself because former players believe that so strongly. But if we're talking about catching 3 of those, you're 4 of 8, and your offense is probably cruising along, and you're not having any problems, and Tennessee pulls away. I'm not an excuse maker, but I do think the weather did not help, and the fact that it was a 30-minute delay, not making excuses, but I don't think it helped. So kudos to
sorry.
Not making excuses, but I think it was a factor.
Yeah, I agree. And again, if you're right, if 3 of those plays are converted on, we're probably, and nothing else changes throughout the game, we're coming back talking about, Tennessee played their C game and it was Austin Peay, so we understand why. We're not having the big concerns that we're talking about right now if 3 of those plays are converted on. And I think what Vegas is seeing is, because we've now seen it, Dave, with Virginia and Austin Peay, with grain of salt, it's Austin Peay, but we did see it with Virginia, at least through the first half. When Tennessee's offense sputters, the defense holds firm. They hold firm. And more importantly than that, the matchup with Florida, look, say Joe Milton has a really rough first half against Florida. Gators still ain't scoring. I think the only way they score is maybe off a turnover in the first half.
I'd rather go to the swamp with a great defense and a good offense than vice versa.
I totally agree.
Yeah, because you can really take the air out of that crowd. I'm not talking about early scores. I'm talking about the fact that they're watching that same old offense, which they're going to get frustrated with because they're used to the Urban Meyer offenses of the world and the Steve Spurrier offenses of the world. I know they've had a layoff, but still, that's what they were used to and raised on. And it ain't that with Graham Mertz. 90 seconds back off the hook sports. Power ratings, yes. We're going to talk the University of Alabama, which, wow, not only got beat, but pushed around off the hook sports.
Candace, I was really heavy into the drug culture. I was selling drugs. I was just constantly in pain. I was missing like a good support system in my life. Cadis has given me everything that I need in order to successfully have a wonderful recovery, in order to have a life that I didn't even know was possible. And it's not just about me anymore, and I love that. I absolutely love it.
You can take your life back. Call Cadis today.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Objective coverage. Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
Okay, while Alabama should be very, very concerned in our SEC power rankings, and they should be, I want to give you free stuff. So go to tncidercompany.com. That's tncidercompany.com. And you can use the promo code HAT. That's HAT. And with any order of their fantastic cider, which is available in almost every state in the union, we won't pick out the 2 states it's not. We won't call them out. But you can get that fantastic cider with some free swag by using the promo code HAT. That's tncidercompany.com. Support our sponsors, tncidercompany.com. All right, let's do this right now. Let's take a look at the SEC power rankings, and that leads us to 4 downs, and it's brought to you by our friends at the Hemp House.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure that you get the best in quality CBD or Delta products. Go to Hemp House Chat. That's 2 T's, hemphousechat.com. Check them out. You will be glad that you did. Know what you're consuming is absolutely highly tested and safe. So that is hemphousechat.com. 4 downs is now. We just had a center on. We're going to have another one right now.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thank you. What down is it?
Coop here. First down.
Oh, yeah. Let's do it. Is the Alabama run over? And if so, how over? May I answer this one first to kind of set it up, Caleb? I usually throw it to you.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I think that the way they got pushed around by Texas, especially late in the game when they could have gotten back in that game and they got pushed around, I think it's over. And by over, I don't want to overreact to one game. I'm reacting to the past season and a half when I think they've looked very vulnerable. So over to me meant last year winning multiple championships, but over means Nick Saban ever winning another championship, just one, which is very different, Caleb. I think it's over. I don't think Nick Saban wins another championship at the University of Alabama.
It's not over. Look, Alabama, we knew this was going to be a problem for them going into this year because they had vulnerabilities last year that Bryce Young covered for. And we know that Jalen Milroe is an awful quarterback. Let's just get this out of the way. He's horrible. Okay. And I can't believe anybody believed in him because of what they did to MTSU. So I understand those points. They just had the number one recruiting class in the country in 2023. May have been the best recruiting class of all time this past year. They got the number four recruiting class next year. They're going to reload around the quarterback like they used to be. Nick Saban just missed on some guys on the recruiting trail the last few years at those positions. He's going to get it right. They got another national title in them. And I think that, again, I can't imagine they're going to be stuck with bad quarterback play after this year. There's somebody that's good that's going to hit the transfer portal and want to go to Alabama, realizing how bad that QB room is.
Yep. I can roll with that, but Nick Saban's not getting any younger, by the way. And in the SEC power rankings, you have Georgia number 1, you say almost by default, and I can roll with that before we get to second. Now, you still have Alabama number 2, Ole Miss number 3, Auburn number 4. So I find that interesting. I'm going to go through the rest of the list as we go on, but I know where you stand. I'm going to tell you where I stand. What down, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Who's the second best team in the SEC?
I mean,
you obviously have Alabama, and that is after the Texas loss a little surprising to me that you have Alabama at number 2. Do you truly believe they're the second best team in the SEC?
If Alabama played any team other than Georgia on a neutral field right now in the SEC, which SEC team would be favored over them?
If Alabama played Georgia?
No, outside of Georgia. Name an SEC team that would be favored over Alabama on a neutral field. Because I don't think anybody would.
Nobody.
Yeah, so that's why they're the second best team in the SEC still right now. And by the way, we keep bringing this up. Yes, they looked bad against Texas. We'll talk about this in a segment in a minute, but the SEC in general looked bad. So you could still be the second best team in the SEC right now, given the way the league has looked right now.
That's true. You got LSU number 5, Tennessee 6. Why Tennessee at 6 before we get to third down?
I think you had to drop Tennessee below LSU just because of how they looked against FCS schools this past weekend. LSU beat Grambling 72-10. Tennessee won 30-13. I had to move Ole Miss up because they beat what I think is the best group of 5 team on the road pretty significantly. Now, Tulane didn't have their quarterback, but Ole Miss still won convincingly. So I think Lane Kiffin actually does have a pretty good team of transfers. And Auburn, again, going out west and beating a Power 5 team when you play a 10:30 game at night, I don't care that it was 14-10. That's still a pretty good win. So I had to knock Tennessee below them.
All right. Coop, what down we got?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Is Georgia at number 1 really good or elite?
They're just really good. Did you watch them against Ball State on Saturday? They got a bad quarterback and a really bad offensive coordinator. They didn't score that 45, 42 points they scored. Almost more than half of it was off turnovers and special teams. And if you actually watch the offense, they couldn't really move the ball that well. And if this is not the week to talk about it because of how Tennessee looked against Austin Peay, but if Tennessee can right the ship, they should actually be excited about playing Georgia at home this year because I think Georgia is in a really bad situation offensively with a quarterback that hasn't figured things out and a really, really, really bad offensive coordinator.
Well, with all due respect, you're dead wrong. Because of recruiting, they're still elite. They can overcome an average quarterback. I think they're still elite. I think they play down to their opponent, which will bite them in the rear at some point if Kirby Smart stays there long enough. But it hasn't bitten them yet because they're so much more talented. So I'm going to say elite. And by elite, a program that I would say at least you can have the discussion against the field would win a national championship. All right, what down, Coop?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
Just simply your biggest takeaway from the SEC this week.
The quarterback play in the SEC is so bad.
That's a good
It's
one.
so bad, guys.
You stole mine, so I'm going to have to go in another direction. But we went over this at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting, Caleb. You weren't supposed to steal mine, but go ahead.
I did not. Wait. I wasn't listening at 3:45. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
I was still drunk out of anger from the Titans losing yesterday. We don't have to talk about that. Kidding, guys. Don't. But yes, I just think the quarterback play. I think KJ Jefferson might be head and shoulders the best quarterback in the SEC right now. I really don't know who's second.
That's a good one. My biggest takeaway, I'll go back to this, and that is that Alabama got pushed around in the clutch. And I started studying the Alabama-Texas game a little late in the week because, obviously we cover Tennessee primarily. And I thought that Texas's defensive line could give them a hard time. I did not think that they would win on both sides of the ball. So that would be my biggest takeaway. And the rest of the teams in the SEC power rankings on offthehooksports.com, if you want to run those down.
Yep, I moved Vanderbilt back to last because they just got pushed around by Wake Forest and everybody's favorite coach in Knoxville, Dave Clawson. 13, I moved Missouri there. Missouri could be 14. I mean, they played horrible against MTSU. That's a bad football team, which I know Dave is happy.
I don't like Missouri to do well in anything.
Yeah, Florida, because of those two teams, was able to move back up to number 12 by default. And then South Carolina is still number 11 because the bottom half of the East is just bad. Kentucky struggled with Eastern Kentucky, which dropped them to number 10. But I got to say, Liam Cohen, I think, had some health issues over the weekend, and I think there were some distractions there. So I actually think they'll mostly be fine. Arkansas at number 9.
Liam Cohen is, for those that don't know.
I'm sorry?
Liam Cohen is, for those that don't know.
Oh, sorry. He is offense coordinator for Kentucky.
There you go.
Number 9 is Arkansas. They are 2-0. They've been pretty convincing, but not willing to move them up just yet. Mississippi State, number 8. They are 2-0. They did beat a Power 5 team, but they shouldn't have won that game. It was an overtime off a bad call at home Saturday night against Arizona. And Texas A&M, number 7. Look, I know the wheels are going to come off Jimbo Fisher. The hot seat talk for this year has begun with Jimbo Fisher, but I still think I would still pick them over. At this moment, they'd be favored over Mississippi State or Arkansas or Kentucky. At this moment.
Neutral site, really quick. How many you have Tennessee at 5, I believe? Is that right?
6.
6, I'm sorry. Neutral site, are they a favorite over any of those 5 above them? Because of what we have seen. In all fairness to Caleb, his power rankings came out before the Vegas 8.5 favorites versus Florida. Would they be a favorite at a neutral site game if they were holding something in Mercedes-Benz against those 5 teams ahead of them?
I think you might see them be favored over Auburn or Ole Miss. I don't think you'd see them favored over LSU, and I'm certain you wouldn't see them favored over Alabama or Georgia. So, but I would say Auburn and Ole Miss, but I can't ignore what Auburn and Ole Miss did over the weekend. I couldn't ignore that and look past it.
Nice comment by Rocky Top Tom. I can't believe Texas went into Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama like a thief. That was a shock. I've never heard that before, beaten like a thief. Have you heard that before?
Never heard that one ever.
Yeah.
I've heard beat like he stole something, but
I have. Beaten like a thief is awesome. I'm stealing that officially. Or beaten like Jalen McCullough beat a trespasser. It could be that as well.
Or like Alvin Kamara in an elevator, who was at the game on Saturday.
It's brutal. All right, let's go to college football week 2 takeaways right now. And the SEC is down. Is your big takeaway? Is it really down, or was it just an off week? How certain do you feel that the SEC is down?
I'm pretty certain it's just down. Again, after Georgia, I talk about neutral site games. If Alabama's playing Penn State, Michigan, or Ohio State, there's a chance all 3 of those teams is favored over Alabama, and they're second in my SEC power rankings right now. And so that's how down we're talking about the SEC being right now. And again, it's because of the quarterback play. This is just one of those random years. Look, long-term longevity, the SEC is the best conference, but every 20 years or so, you just have a year where the league every team is in a mode where they're not where they need to be. This reminds me of 2005. SEC that year when I believe Georgia won the SEC title with 2 losses and then got the brakes beat off of them by West Virginia in the Sugar Bowl. Kind of reminds me of that year a little bit. So I think it's just down.
Yep, that's fair. Other takeaways that you pull from the weekend, and you can read Caleb's column on offthehooksports.com.
Oh, early 2000s blue bloods outside of the SEC are back. Florida State, Texas, USC, Ohio State, Miami all look like top 10 teams. I named 4 of the top 5 right there, and I just named every national champion from 2001 to 2005, and which is pretty impressive. For those who are interested, Tennessee dropped to number 11 in the AP poll, stayed number 9 in the coaches poll. So,
what do you make of it? By the way, I put more credence in the AP poll because I think the coaches poll are done by sports information directors.
Yeah, I do too. I think they, like myself, couldn't look past how they struggle with Austin Peay. And there are teams that have pulled out more quality wins. Look, I'm going to get to my top 10 in a second to show you guys. I don't think when you do a top 10 based on style points, schedule strength, and record, Tennessee technically doesn't have a case to be top 20 right now. That doesn't mean they're not one of the 20 best teams, but I do my top 20 and top 10 based on resume and nothing else. And so that's
what you should do. And it should be very, very fluid in, the early weeks. It should, you could have somebody go from not 1 probably, but 5 to 25, I believe. Because your preseason should be very fluid where you move people around.
I throw preseason out the window the minute week 1 happens.
Yeah. And I have no problem with Tennessee dropping to 11. Again, they control their own destiny. So I have no problem with the AP voters looking at Tennessee and saying, hey, that was a very lackluster performance against Austin Peay. So I get that, but they're going to bounce right back up into the top 10 if they beat Florida. And also, offense, a huge question in the SEC and Big Ten. We're coming off a year in which Tennessee and Ohio State were very, very good offensively. But you say a huge question in the SEC and Big Ten, not to just single 2 teams out, but why do you think an offense in general is a huge question, Caleb?
Well, so we touched on the SEC in the last one, so we know that one. I'll move over to the Big Ten. Iowa is still in the Big Ten. Michigan plays very ball control as it is. So the real standout here is that Ohio State's offense is a big question. Kyle McCord's an issue. It hasn't shown yet because they haven't played anybody. Kyle McCord's going to be a problem for them because I don't think he is. I think after, a run of pretty good quarterbacks at Ohio State that were great there and didn't work out in the NFL, you might have somebody that won't work out in the college level in Kyle McCord.
And then prime time, looking legit. And another win for the Buffs, now 2-0. And wow. He reminds me in a lot of ways of Josh Heupel. The difference being is that Heupel is a better offensive mind and a better offensive coach, and he's not outspoken. But assembling talent, having that direction, I think is pretty significant, and a similarity between the two. I just am blown away by how quickly they're winning at Colorado. And listen, that they could be a factor headed forward. And you also mentioned in your Heisman race, you have Travis Hunter, number 1, Shedeur Sanders of Colorado, number 2, followed by Caleb Williams, Michael Penix Jr., and Sam Hartman of Notre Dame. So at this point, my vote, I would have to give it to Shedeur Sanders, but nobody wins the Heisman in September.
No one does. I'm still going Travis Hunter because he still actually had another 70 yards receiving while playing defensive back over the weekend. This isn't like Charles Woodson in 97 where, they occasionally brought in Charles Woodson on the other side. No, Travis Hunter's playing full-time on both sides of the ball, which I've never seen that before at the college level. And if he does this the whole year, I don't know if he can, but if he does it the whole year and he's this productive, I can't not give him the Heisman.
No, I see your argument, but if I had to pick somebody right now, it would be Sanders. And then the top 10 in college football playoff outlook, you've got Texas at number 1, Florida State number 2, Colorado 3, Duke 4. What are you talking about? Auburn 5, Miami 6, Utah 7, Miami 8, Ole Miss.
That was an accident. I meant to write Mississippi State. I will correct that.
Okay, gotcha. I said Miami twice. Okay, so we'll get that fixed. But you don't have Georgia in the top 10. Is that based off our criteria earlier that ours is fluid and they could make it up there?
Yeah, these aren't power rankings. These are top 10 is based on your resume. Georgia hadn't beaten anybody yet. And whatever you want to say about the teams I named, they've all beaten Power 5 schools. Colorado has beaten 2 Power 5 schools in back-to-back weeks. Now, you can question Nebraska. You can question TCU, but that's a story for another day. And so Ole Miss hasn't beaten one technically, but Tulane is basically a Power 5 school. Tulane's a more quality win than Virginia is. So I think, right now Georgia has – do I think Georgia is the best team in the country right now? Yes. Do they have the best resume through 2 weeks? No. Who have they beaten?
That's fair. How many SEC teams would trade their head coach for Deion Sanders today?
That's a great question. So I think Florida is obvious. Florida is like – Florida's already calling Deion as we speak.
I mean, I'm going to – listen, if I'm Florida, I'm calling 2 people when this whole Billy Napier thing goes south, and it's going to. I'm calling Lane Kiffin and Deion Sanders. It's only 2 people I'm calling, and one of them's going to say yes.
Yeah, I agree.
And Lane would say yes. Lane would say yes. I don't know if Deion would with the Florida State ties. But remember
Deion resents Florida State for not hiring him.
Yeah, well, right. And Deion's also a businessman. So if he thinks there's an opportunity to win at Florida, given that in-state talent base, which he knows so well, he's going to do that. And so you think about it, how many SEC teams would trade their head coach for Deion Sanders? And it's brought to you by our friends at Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Look, I have LASIK, no glasses, no contacts. I love it. Local doctors that can address cataract and LASIK procedure. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. That is easy to find at ccteyes.com, ccteyes.com. And for your routine examinations, they also have their local locations that can take care of you. So how many teams would trade for Deion Sanders today?
Okay, so we got Florida. I think we got Texas A&M. Deion belongs at Texas A&M. That's Dallas area. That would just be, imagine Deion at A&M.
That would be great.
I think Oklahoma. I think there's some issues with Brent Venables. People were excited after week 1, but that's because he beat Butch Jones.
Oh, wait, I was just going SEC teams. Oh, well,
they're going to be in the SEC.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
So Texas wouldn't trade him. Missouri and Vanderbilt, obviously. Ask by Smoky Mountain Red, would Deion jump that quick, and what is his buyout? He had so much leverage that I would be interested to find that out, but I bet it's not much for him to get out of that. Would he jump that quick? Yeah, because his son's eligible for the draft next year, right?
I think so.
Okay, so
he will just take his son with him to Florida if he goes there and just win there.
In reality, yeah. I mean, you could. And with NIL money, could Shedeur Sanders say, I'm really enjoying the college experience, so I might stay my full 5 years? When in reality, he's probably worthy of a 3-and-out type of guy based off what I've seen. But, so who else? Let's make it easier. Who wouldn't? Wouldn't?
So Tennessee and Georgia wouldn't. They're both very happy with their situation.
Agreed. South Carolina wouldn't because they like Shane Beamer, even though I would if I were their athletic director.
Okay, South Carolina wouldn't. I don't think Kentucky would because they like Mark Stoops, and they should like Mark Stoops. Mark Stoops has done an amazing job there.
I agree. And remember, an athletic director would have to turn the keys over to Deion Sanders. If he says he wants something done, it has to be done tomorrow, not next week. If he wants a facility built or something like that, you're going to have to move quickly. A lot of ADs aren't okay with that. Mizzou would obviously,
particularly at Kentucky when they want to be a basketball school. So
yeah, that would not work well at Kentucky. So I think Stoops, Beamer, Heupel, Smart, What about Alabama with Nick Saban getting up there?
Are they going to force Nick Saban out? Are they really going to say, hey, Nick, thanks, but no thanks?
No, but you wonder. What about Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin? Because Lane has tried to get out of there before. Would Ole Miss boosters say, let's go with the Sanders cat? I'm going to say no, because I think Dion would realize he would have the same glass ceiling of NIL money that Lane has currently in Oxford. So I'll say no. Somebody on the message board said LSU. And no, I don't think that LSU would trade Brian Kelly for anybody. So that would be one, not trade. So basically, I think we're at Heupel, Saban, Kelly, Stoops, Beamer, and Smart. Those are the only ones that I think Tennessee wouldn't. I'm sorry, that the SEC teams wouldn't trade for.
Auburn, Hugh Freeze. I think Auburn's pretty high on Hugh Freeze. Whatever you think of Hugh Freeze.
Yeah. There you go.
Hugh Freeze is an amazing coach.
Now, I want to clarify something too. I don't think Billy Napier is going to be fired after this year, but I think it's going to go south eventually. Just like I felt Eli Drinkwitz was going to go south this time last year. I think it will go south. So I'm not talking about this year, because Smoky Mountain Red, I mentioned the buyout. Billy Napier is supposedly like $51 million. So I'm not saying it happens this year, but I'm saying if there is a change, that's the first guy I call. Oh, Arkansas loves Sam Pittman. So, and I think Deion Sanders would say there's a glass ceiling like Ole Miss at as far as NIL money at Arkansas. So I wouldn't see him going there. Although if Walmart got really involved there in nearby Bentonville, right next to Fayetteville, let's face it. I mean, they could change Arkansas's football program.
They really could. They could throw so much money. The
median income in Bentonville, which is just outside of Fayetteville, where Walmart is housed and the corporate offices are, is like $125,000, and you're in the middle of nowhere where everything's cheap. So I don't know if they wanted to throw some NIL money around, maybe there's more than I think, but I haven't seen much of it to this point. That could be Sam Pittman, an old school guy saying, I like to raise people up through the program as opposed to chasing transfers and spending NIL money. I'm not sure.
Don't sleep on this with Arkansas. If Texas A&M is falling apart, and I believe they are with Jimbo Fisher, if Oklahoma is not going to cut, if Brent Venables doesn't cut it at Oklahoma, and I think you and I both don't have faith in Brent Venables to cut it long-term at Oklahoma, well, Arkansas all of a sudden can be the school that goes in and gets some of those Texas recruits and competes with Texas. There's always like which school near Texas competes with Texas for Texas recruits. Arkansas might be the second biggest player in the state of Texas for those recruits behind the Longhorns in about a year.
No doubt. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Do that like immediately and turn your notifications on, whether or not you're on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you are, because we will have breaking news as we did today with the players meeting held on Sunday after the Austin Peay win. We'll also have breakdown of the SEC in Tennessee. So be sure those notifications are on. Hit like and subscribe. And we want to be sure and thank our friends at Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the fire opals? That is a Tennessee tradition. Go to rickterryjewelry.com, rickterryjewelry.com. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook